Hey family, I'm popping in before today's episode. This is actually going to be a replay of the third most played episode of 2022, and it is how to get more done in less time. Let's get into the episode. Hello family, and welcome back to another episode of the Organize My Thoughts podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about why you should start shortening your deadlines. This episode is for the perfectionists, the procrastinators, the people who procrastinate because of perfectionism. This episode is for you. And I know you're probably like, girl, what? Shorten my deadlines? That sounds so stressful. Like, are you just trying to make my life difficult? Hear me out. Hear me out. By the end of this episode, you'll understand the benefits why you should shorten your deadlines and how it actually can help improve your productivity. But before we get into this episode, if you all could just do me a big favor and make sure that you rate and review this show so that more people can find us, so more people can get access to this amazing information, so we can grow this community, you guys. Thank you so much, and make sure that you are subscribed. Okay, so back to today's episode. Again, we're talking about why you should start shortening your deadlines. Let's talk for a second, though, about perfectionism and procrastination and how the two tie in. Y'all, for years, I have struggled with perfectionism and procrastination, and it wasn't until last year that I realized that the two were connected. I realized that as I started, taking on clients in my business, and even before then, when I was in art school, I would always have all of these deadlines. And I was always the type of person that wanted to make sure that everything was perfect before it went out. And because I wanted to make sure that everything was perfect, I would, come up with these really long deadlines to make sure that I had plenty enough time to work out all the kinks, to make sure that everything was, again, perfect. And so I'll use a design project, for example. In the beginning of my business, I would set about 3 weeks to a month for each client in order to get the deliverables done. But because I struggled with perfectionism and procrastination, I noticed that, week one, I might be a little more, relaxed with trying to get my goals done for the project. Week two, I'm like, okay, the tasks are piling up. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, I still got time. Then week 3 and 4 rolls around and I realized like, oh my gosh, I haven't even started the project. And this is what procrastination does. It makes you think that you have more time than you really do, and that you have the luxury of getting done tomorrow what you really could have done today. And I would always find myself so stressed out because I'd be again waiting until the last minute to flip around these projects. Now, I'm a person who does everything in excellence. So even when I don't care if I have to stay up all night, I'm not ever going to deliver something that is not meeting my standard of excellence for the way that I deliver things. But it was causing me so much stress. And then I began to think, I was like, why am I telling my clients, this is still in the beginning of my business. I was like, why am I telling my clients that it's going to take me a month for me to deliver the end result for their project, when really, based on the way my procrastination is, if I shorten that time, I would be able to not only turn around their project quicker, but I would also be able to eliminate a lot of this time where I was in my head overthinking, or even, giving my attention to tasks that really weren't relevant for my goals and my priorities. And so I began to develop this strategy where I would take on clients and I would start, shortening the time the time to deliver for them. So I went from making, saying that the deliverables would be there, in about 4 weeks to 3 weeks. And then from 3 weeks to 2 weeks. And as I began to do that, I started noticing a couple of things, which I'm about to highlight to you now. The first thing that I noticed was that I had less time to overthink. One of the things that, I used to struggle with as a perfectionist and a procrastinator was overthinking. Again, because I wanted everything to be perfect, I would spend so much time over planning instead of actually executing, the ideas. And just to continue, again, we're talking about a design project at the time, just to keep it relevant. I would be over planning Pinterest boards and spending hours and hours and hours doing all of this research, to the point where I started second guessing colors, second guessing patterns, second guessing typography. And I'm staring at these, these things that I'm creating for so long that they're taking on, shapes of their own. And I realized, okay, like I'm giving myself way too much time, because the more time I gave myself, the more I would spend in overthinking and less time executing. So one of the benefits, again, of shortening your deadlines is you have less time to overthink. And when you're not overthinking, when you're not in your head, you can get stuff done. And if you're a person who struggles with anxiety, this is another good method, because it would seem that because you shorten the deadline, it would be a lot of pressure on you. But if you're being cognizant of the way that you operate anyway, like if you're a person who struggles with procrastination and struggles with anxiety, you understand that you typically put things off because of overthinking. And so taking your time back, shortening your deadlines would be really beneficial for you, because you're cutting down that time where anxiety could come in and try to, just overwhelm you. So I definitely recommend shortening your deadlines. So the second benefit to shortening your deadlines is that you are wasting less time and becoming more efficient. Remember, we only have 24 hours in a day. So if you start to take, a look at what you're spending your time on, if you have a project coming up and you're spending all of your time scrolling on social media or doing things that just don't, focus on your priorities or help you to achieve your goals, you're literally wasting time. So it's like, why not be able to flip more clients? And remember, it's not that you're rushing, because as a perfectionist, your goal is to create excellent content, and you wouldn't be producing or delivering anything that was below, your standard of excellency. All you're doing is just making sure that the time that you do have, the time that you did delegate to this client, is beneficial and productive for both you and them. And if you're continuously working at a standard of excellency, your client doesn't know whether you waited to the last minute or, the last night before the project was due, at a 4-week or 2-week deadline. All they know is that the end product is excellent. But what you know is that, okay, now I have the understanding that I have the ability to produce great work in a shorter, more efficient amount of time. And moving forward, I'll be able to reproduce this and think a lot quicker and be able to create a lot quicker as well. And that moves me into my third benefit of creating shorter deadlines, is that you'll be able to increase your capacity to think and create quicker. A lot of times we can get stuck in the idea stage, again, because we are overthinking and we feel like we have, so much time to create and to do these things. But when you are shortening your deadlines, you're training your mind to be able to come up with ideas faster. You're training, yourself to be able to execute in your software quicker. And this is actually the goal of most service-based companies, larger corporate companies. They are trying to figure out how they can produce the same standard of excellence using, less resources and less time. Because time is money, and we only have 24 hours in a day. So we really need to start thinking about how we can maximize on those hours. I also started paying attention to when people would ask me to do things that would have ridiculous timelines, and something about me just doesn't like to turn things down. Like, I love a good challenge. And so I began to take on certain things for other people with these, again, ridiculous deadlines. And I started looking at the quality of the work I was producing, and I was kind of shocked. I was like, wow, I was able to produce this really good outcome in such a short amount of time. Like, I can definitely do this for my own work. If I can do it for other people and it meets and it really exceeds their standards, then I could definitely do this for my own work. And so start to think about times where you were presented with a completely unrealistic deadline, but you got it done and you produced something that you didn't even think you could do, and it looked great. The same principle applies. So just to summarize, the 3 benefits of shortening your deadlines are: you have less time to overthink, less wasted time, and you become more efficient, and you increase your capacity to think and create quicker. Now, before we end the episode, I do just want to give 2 tips for how to implement this in your life. My first tip is always just to test it out. Don't test it out to a drastic way. Again, if it takes you 6 weeks to do something, don't start telling your clients that you can do things in a week. Start just slowly reducing that time. And as you begin to do this and test, you'll begin to find that optimal time where okay, this is the point where I can produce the same standard of excellency, without compromising anything along the way. And my second tip would be to make your deadlines internal first. As you're testing this out, don't start telling your clients right away that it takes you a certain amount of time or this least amount of time to do this. Start with that as an internal goal. So if you gave your client 3 weeks to get the project done, set an internal goal for you to get it done in 2 weeks. I always go by the rule, over deliver and under promise. Sometimes we over promise our clients things, and then when we don't meet that goal, we don't meet that expectation that we set, then we start to feel bad. We start to just beat ourselves up, and the client is disappointed because we didn't meet that expectation. So again, start with that being an internal thing. I'm going to set a goal to get this project done a week before the deadline, but I'm still going to commit to the client, at 3 weeks. And then I'm going to see if that system worked for me. And if it did work, make sure you're taking notes about, what you did differently and continue to optimize it. So before we wrap up this episode, please make sure that you're subscribed to the show and that you rate and review the podcast so that more people can find us. I love you all very much, and I'll see you all in the next episode.